Live.
Yep.
And good afternoon, Frankston. Apologies for the slight delay. I definitely don't recommend using Microsoft Edge if you are doing Facebook Lives, but we are here and we are underway. Apologies for yesterday. Tip from Glenn Cooper, if you're doing these on a regular basis, clear out the cookies in your browser. Otherwise, it interferes with your ability to go live on Facebook. That's my tech tip for today. Today we are discussing the role of local council in economic growth and marketing of Frankston. And to help illustrate that point, Sue has a background photo of the Nepean Highway with boarded up shop fronts. I've got, this one's from Plain Street, just behind me. We knew we already had an issue with retail vacancies even prior to COVID-19, but we also know that this is going to have a much greater impact after COVID-19 as well. So in today's discussion, we're going to explore a bit about the role that council plays in terms of economic development and marketing of Frankston as somewhere not just to live, but also somewhere that you might work or operate a business out of as well. I'm going to perhaps start with Justin, and Justin's already apologized to me that he may have to go off video because he's got some bandwidth issues. Clearly we need a digital city strategy to help you out there, Justin. But given your background and understanding quite a bit around property and so on, I thought you might want to open up with your views on the role of council in economic development and marketing.
Can everyone hear me okay? It's not broken up?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Look, in terms of perhaps council,
You're a bit broken there, Justin.
in economic development, maybe.
Whilst you try to sort that out, maybe Sue, I'll come to you because you've got the most desolate background behind you.
Okay, cool. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our session. Actually, I can hear a bit of feedback. I'm wondering what's causing that. Is that, can you hear that too, Stephen?
I can hear it.
I can hear it. Yeah.
I wonder what's causing that today. Oh, that sounds better. Is that gone?
It does sound a bit better. Let's see how you go.
All right, I'll keep going then. So I was very interested this week to hear the big federal budget announcement, which is really good news for Frankston, and that's a budget boost for us as part of the local roads and community infrastructure program which the federal government run. And there has been a number of emails or Facebook messages floating around about how that grant could potentially be used, but that is a very current, very real example of a pot of money, $4.2 million, nice, which the council can get involved with determining how that could be spent specifically around a local roads and community infrastructure program. So I know one of the ideas that immediately moved is the Nepean Highway regeneration, refresh, because it is both a roads and a community infrastructure project. So that was a really interesting piece of news to look at this week, and I'm sure you'll all have some comments to make about that and some perspectives on it. One thing that grabbed my attention was the fact that it's a use it or lose it by the end of 2021. So I had a look on the federal government's website in terms of how it works, what the eligibility criteria are, and for me, in terms of the council's role, it's an example of where a group of people are going to need to be very proactive, very action oriented, very switched on to work with a multidisciplinary team across the community to scope a project, get it submitted, put out to tender all the people that are going to be needed to work on it, set the timelines, create the whole project plan. And I guess there'll be a lot of experience within council itself on working with multidisciplinary groups and state government, federal government representatives on this. But for me, the real issue is the speed with which this needs to be done. So having a cohesive, well-communicating group of people to help drive and support it is going to be crucial. And there are almost like timed payments of the grant. So every quarter there'd need to be a feedback on progress of using this federal government grant. So my experience of running big projects like that, it's eminently doable. Doesn't matter how big or small the project is. If you have a really, really clear goal, a really clear focus, great consultation, which has brought in all stakeholders to achieve that, it is quite incredible how you can move heaven and earth to get things done in a very, very short space of time. So with this one particular piece of news around an economic development opportunity for Frankston, I think council is going to be vital to ensure we can capitalise on the money and get something done. And by the end of next year, it's really thrilling almost to think we could have an amazing piece of work up and running somewhere in the community, which is going to make a transformational difference. So that's just one observation from me around the development this week.
Great, thank you very much, Sue. Just apologies to our viewers, we're clearly having some issues in the Northwest Ward with connectivity. So I'm just going to pass on to Peter now, and then we'll come back to you, Justin. But I'll pass on to Peter, and then after Peter, Brad, I'd be curious to get your reflections, given that you've previously served on council as well, and then we'll open up the conversation a bit more broadly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. I just want to join on to the end of what Sue was saying, because yeah, that's exactly right. We have to hit the ground running and be capable of getting this done. No room for arguments. Just get it done. You know, plan it out. The other thing in tandem with that is, of course, there's I think some state government funding for revitalising the streets and street venues. So the two things can go really well together. But just back on the project management side, yep. If probably everybody here today has been involved in project management and large scale projects. So we all know, and in fact, I had to preside over the building phase 2 development of TAFE Frankston. And that's a pretty big project. Not quite as big as the revitalisation of the Nepean Highway, but yeah, we're approaching $100 million there. And there were unforeseen issues that came up. And this, of course, as Sue would know and others would know, these unforeseen issues can come up. Things underground that you didn't know about, or other factors, or somebody coming in from left field. So yes, I absolutely agree. You really need a great plan from the start that will take into account contingencies because they happen. And at a certain point where there was on a large project, not the recent one I just mentioned, another one which I won't mention, at the end of it, I came in as a project manager for about the last 2 months over a 14-month period, poisonous chalice, I think. And we managed to get it done, but it was a little bit overspent, but not a lot. And somebody said, well, there you go. What do you think happened there? And I said, well, as we used to say in large materials development projects in the Navy, when we were doing that, we had a big plaque on the wall and it said, when anybody asked at the end what went wrong, the answer is the planning in the beginning. So it can go wrong from the start. If you don't plan properly, you never get it there. So it would be great to have elected councillors there who can hit the ground running, do it quickly, efficiently and carefully. And you need a bit of background to be able to do that. I'll finish with that.
Thanks very much, Peter. Justin, do you want to give it another shot, or do you want me to pass to Brad?
Go straight to Brad for the moment, because
Yeah, sure.
Just hoping if I go and put everything off, it might work better.
Look, I'd only say one of the key objectives of the council when it comes to new infrastructure and new projects is to try to get somebody else to pay for it. Any action that helps in that means the council has more money for other stuff, you know, perhaps for other projects, parks, reserves, sporting pavilions, whatever it is, right? So anyone that offers money like this, that's welcome. You know, the devil's often in the detail, the criteria of the grant, how much each council is allowed to have. But yeah, look, the council has council officers that know all about how to apply for grants. They do all the hard work. It's really up to the councillors to really specify what the priority is for that spend, what project are we actually interested in. You know, that's more of a community slash councillor level decision. So yeah, absolutely welcome the announcement, absolutely welcome the money, but we just need to make sure that there's actually enough money. There's probably strings attached, like the council has to pay half or whatever it is. But yeah, the council officers will have a list of projects that they would like to see funded, and that'll be presented to councillors, and the councillors can look at those and choose which ones they want. There's always more projects on the books than there is money to pay for it. Yeah, so it's a good thing. I'm just a little bit wary of the devil in the detail, which perhaps hasn't yet come to light. You know, look, all the candidates in this election and everyone on this Zoom, you know, is all about trying to keep rates to a minimum, right? And that means spending less. Okay, so advocating for state money, for federal money, absolutely very welcome.
Great, thanks very much, Brad. I'm going to, Justin's just sent me the things he would like to say. So I'm going to ask him to move his lips in sync with me reading out his things for me. As I said, these are Justin's words, not my words. Justin's view is that council really plays a role as a facilitator of economic development. They play a key role in the facilitation of a location's strategic plan design and deployment process to ensure the outcome is supportive of the location's brand promise, which does link us back to the topic of this conversation around marketing. That was a little ad-lib by me. You don't have to move your lips for that bit, Justin. Place management and place branding are an essential part of creating places where people want to invest, work, and live. But you have to ensure a quality product to begin with. This is part of the issue with the overall aesthetics of Frankston. Place is very important, but so is capacity in regard to talent, infrastructure, business capacity, and many other aspects. Council needs to play a key role in identifying and filling those gaps. Practically, the way to accomplish economic development objectives is through advocating, influencing strategic choices in both infrastructure and asset creation, investment, as well as public policies. Think of these choices as brand development, and they are articulated in a location strategic plan. Good Lord, you spent quite a bit of time writing this. Whilst Frankston's community, public and private sector leaders are responsible for developing the strategic plan, it's imperative to ensure that the process is robust and resultant action plans are both funded and executed. We need to ensure that we're working in unison with state and federal wherever possible for mutual grants to offset the cost to the city as a key investor. Some examples of how this could work: Nepean Highway revitalisation, and we've seen some recent announcements there with respect to that. And we know that there was a position put out by Committee for Greater Frankston in that regard. centralising an education district with the announced line extension, which also we've discussed in previous FB lives about how we might be able to have an education and healthcare hub. I am ad-libbing a bit. I do apologise, Justin. Capitalising on a healthcare hub with the announcement of the hospital expansion, reviewing our investments and making decisions on where and how to invest for an equitable ROI or return on investment, if you don't recognise the acronym. Investment into incentives for business reopening and creation, fostering a Buy Frankston campaign, localised marketing. I imagine, Justin, you're kind of picking up on the theme around go local first as well, which applies as much for consumer purchases as it does for business purchases, let alone council purchases as well. Obviously, it's got to be in line with state level procurement guidelines as well. Investment into job creation through industry and manufacturing. I'm just going to add commercial activity to that as well. Sorry, I'll ad-lib. Facilitating a Frankston brand of being a place worthwhile investing into the education, healthcare, infrastructure, and long-term planning, etc. in place. In summary, planning of services, financial investment, development, and infrastructure. Have I given a fair representation to your words there, Justin? And do you want to see if your audio is improved? Clearly not, because he's not listening to me.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Or is it
okay.
bad?
No, you're back.
I'm here. Oh, thanks so much, Steve. Look, in the gaps really well, but look, that sort of sums up some important parts that I saw in terms of both economic development, what the council's role is, and what our role as councillors would be in space as well. Because look, it's all well and good, I suppose, having the economic development, but if you don't have the marketing to centralise it, going.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. And I'll let you continue to send me comments in our chat so that I can speak for you. So my view on it is, yes, absolutely, we need to be working with state and federal governments in terms of directing resources to be invested in the right places, and whether that's the renewal of the Pean Highway, or whether that's the CBD, or whether that's even looking at the use of industrial land across Frankston City. But I think it's important as well that we need to engage with and proactively encourage private landlords and the private sector to buy into a vision of what Frankston could be in order to do that. I also think from a marketing perspective, despite a lot of the good work that's happened in Frankston over the last 20 years, we still suffer from the legacy identity or legacy brand of Frankston, which even today you still hear people comment on, you know, the kind of Sam Newman types who will disparage Frankston. You know, again, and I've said this before, the real joy for me was discovering Frankston as being the kind of place that I didn't just want to live in, but actually it's the kind of place I want to spend more time in and bring my family up in. So from an economic perspective, we need to shift the branding and perception of Frankston, but we also need to make it much more of a destination. And I think, Sue, the image that you have behind you is illustrative of the kind of problem that we have in that regard. Is at the moment, there aren't many reasons for people to actually stop in Frankston as they're heading out towards Mornington or other parts of the peninsula. And I think that this is where council really needs to kind of provide a strategic narrative and a real vision, which includes, you know, consultation, not just with residents, but also with business and others and government, to actually say, right, this is the direction we're going to set. So the new council really, in the first 6 months, should be saying, this is the new direction that we're agreeing on and setting, and stick to it for the full term, and actually act as an enabler of economic development, rather than saying no to things like, well, you know, is there an opportunity to bring in a government department which will bring jobs into town, which will then encourage more business growth because there'll be more
people who are needing to use the services of local businesses and so on and so forth. And so I think we need to look at beyond just a kind of, well, let's do economic development by refurbishing a street. There's actually a much bigger set of questions that also need to be asked. I was going to stop there because I'm rambling on a bit. Justin has just added in there as well that the stigma is played to death and we need to move past it and not even give it any more airtime. I think it's really good point there, and it's irrelevant to what we're building, because what we need is a Frankston that focuses on the future rather than looking backwards continually and thinking, oh, but this is what people think of us.
No,
I'm going to leave that question there.
I might make a point if I can. We've talked about economic development and marketing of Frankston, and I think what needs to be really clear, the only people who will focus on promoting Frankston and economic development in Frankston is Frankston, right? That's and that's the council. We do have local MPs, and they represent us up to the state government and also the feds in Canberra. But the state, has to manage the state as a whole. The state is interested in Victoria. The state isn't about prioritising Frankston as much as we would like them to. Frankston has to be the ones to step up and promote Frankston for jobs, for economic activity, for marketing, etc. So that's why the council has an economic development department and a marketing department. That's what we want. Yeah, because they're the only people on the planet who are doing that. Right. So something came up just now about stigma in Frankston. There is a stigma elsewhere around Melbourne and even around the state. But I'll tell you what, the people who live in Frankston, in the Frankston area, they love living here. Right? There's no one in Frankston's eager to leave. Right? The people who live here, they are proud of their community. They love living here. They know how terrific it is. And each and every one of us, I think, has a role to play in destroying that stigma. I've had relatives who have come from interstate and they love the place, and then they visit the rest of Melbourne and they just want to return and stay a few more nights at my place in Frankston. So I think all of us have to talk Frankston up. I think all of us have to address that stigma. The council are doing it. The council ought to be doing it, and that ought to continue as well. It's our community.
Yeah, I agree. And did you want to say something, Sue? Or?
You go ahead, Peter. I'll chip in after you.
I'll try to be quick. I agree with what Brad's saying. I think our politicians who are in the area, I don't care what flavour they are, they should be, and I think they do, also try and push Frankston, which I think is great. Certainly Frankston Council does. We've talked about events in the past. We had a whole show on events. I think we talked about events. Events is one thing to get people here, just like, as Brad said, he had relatives, I think you were saying, came in. I had people, I think I mentioned that people from Queensland came down. Now, they had heard about the reputation of Frank, the Sam Newman rubbish, and probably from his son who lives over in Geelong. Anyway, he came, stayed, he said, I like this place, this is great. It was almost, gee, what were they talking about? So there certainly is that stigma thing that goes on. I think events, getting people to come here can help. So I think that's something that, and we've talked about that before, we should try to do more of.
Yeah, my sort of observations around marketing are that it's like having a conversation with your viewers, or in this case the public and people who are interested in coming to Frankston. So when you decide that you want to have a conversation about something, you really think about, what is it I want to say? And I know we have this byline or this strap line, the lifestyle capital of Victoria. I know a couple of people have raised that. Is that still current? Is that still relevant? Given everything that's happened this year and wanting to refresh and revisit what Frankston is going to look like in 20 years, maybe there's an opportunity to start a different conversation in how we talk about and display and showcase what Frankston is as a place to live, as a place to work, as a place to visit. You know, what is it we want to be talking about to people to generate this economic recovery, because it can happen on a very big scale, like a federal grant to improve roads and community spaces, or it can be at state level where there's some stimulus to get us identifying these parklets and this footpath trading for all of our hospitality groups. Or it could be about helping people explain, you know, come and visit here, because then when you're here, we'll go and do this at the Arts Centre, we'll go and look at the sculptures, we'll spend a day on the beach, or we can even go regionally and step down to some wineries on the peninsula because of where we are. So I think deciding a strategy, as Justin was talking about, for how we want to market, how we want to talk about who we are as a city, is a really important launch pad. And then it gives people the threads of communication to speak to, either as you're in a business, small, medium, large, or as families or community groups or whoever you are. And I think once you start that conversation and have something really great to say, that just helps influence reputation and style and image. And I think that is a key part of our economic development here, having those different conversations. Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. I'm just going to read out some comments that Justin has sent to me. So if you can move your lips again, please, Justin, as I'm speaking for a badly dubbed video. But a couple of points from Justin. One is, in order to have stakeholder private investment, we need to invest in ourselves as well. This is the basis of what we're talking about in principle. Marketing is about focusing on an attraction basis, why you need to be in Frankston. And his second point here is, we can't lose our identity in the process. However, it's important to balance the new Frankston whilst respecting the old as well, which I think is actually also a point well made. Thank you, Justin. You sound very similar to me, but well done. I think that's a really good point. And so I'll just pick up on one thing: is there's no need for people to go to the wineries of the Mornington Peninsula, because they can go to the gin distillery or one of the new microbreweries that we now have in Frankston as well. Okay. So we can keep them contained within the Frankston municipality.
Yeah, Seaford.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think I think these are all really good points. One of the things that we also need, if we're going to sort of embark on a really well thought marketing of Frankston, there's got to be substance that sits behind it. Because people, if you start, and I've seen cities around the world do this, where they've embarked on a marketing campaign which has been a little bit too shallow, and then as a result, people kind of quickly realise that actually you're saying things about the place that don't necessarily hold water when you. It's a bit like I don't know, you might remember, Sue, living in England, but you know, Blackpool being pushed out as a holiday destination, and you get there and it's all right to visit for a weekend, but actually it's a little bit rubbish. And I think that, you know, we need to really emphasize, I think, all those different components that we have within Frankston. The other danger, of course, is that events, whilst they attract people to places like Frankston, you know, whether it's the Waterfront Festival, whether it's Music Festival, whether it's all these other things, they're almost like sugar hits to economic development. And what you need is that kind of sustained, ongoing engagement and investment over time. So it's good to have events that kind of act as markers to attract people, but also provide recreation and cultural engagement for people that live here. But we also need that sustained effort as well, because events alone are not going to do it. Just before, I can see Brad's itching to speak. So, but just before you do, Brad, I just want to pick up a couple of comments. Lydia Wheeler has asked if Oliver Hill will be part of the new branding strategy. Through my work, I normally operate the no Muppet principle. However, I think in the case of Oliver Hill, we might be able to make an exception and really ramp up activity in the West Ward, particularly if it relieves pressure on some of the other wards as well. Another good point from Oliver Hill himself is also about this being part of the 2040 vision. And I think that's one of the things that's going to be really important for the incoming council, is about taking carriage of that 2040 vision and actually trying to drive some of that forward quite early on. Very good point from Nikki Foster, that as a business owner, she doesn't even consider the stigma that we see or that we hear others talk about as well. And we're getting lots of comments here. I'll come back to you. Brad, I know you're itching to speak, so I will pause there and we'll come back to comments shortly.
I don't know where you got that idea from, Stephen.
The look.
The look, dear me, I'll have to work on my poker face. Yeah, look, everyone wants Frankston to get ahead. The other comment I would make about promoting Frankston, economic development in Frankston, you know, we need to be able to successfully lobby, and to do that, we need to have some influence. We need to be taken seriously by the government. And what's come up in this election with a lot of responses I've had from voters, and what other candidates have had as well, is that they're interested in, you know, party politics. And what I want to say now is that it's critical that councillors do not involve themselves in those types of issues. We need to be taken seriously by not just the community, but when we lobby and advocate for money from the state and from the feds, they need to know that we don't have an extra grind, that we're not you know, trying to discredit anyone. We're not trying to play politics. We need to advocate for Frankston. So councillors need to be neutral. Councillors need to put aside their personal views, not provide commentary on what's happening with, you know, response to COVID, or response to, you know, the budget reply, or, you know, what's our view on the Palestinian question, or whatever it is. Focus on the actual job, because then we'll be taken seriously. Then we'll have some influence. Look after the council, look after the local people, concentrate on the job. That's what we're here for.
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
I'm trying to look eager to speak like Brad did. Inadvertently. But look, I just want to say a couple of things. I think with respect to, I've answered questions on what do you think we can do for economic development in Frankston. I started off one response by one of my problems with answering it is how much I've got to say, where and how do I order things. And as far as events are concerned, as far as the Nepean Highway is concerned, as far as you know, revitalising the Central Activities District, maybe planning, etc., which we've mentioned before, the precinct, you know, educational hospital, etc., $500 million, $500 million hospital, phase 2 and 3 for TAFE. All of these things are going, we need to walk and chew gum. We need, and 2040 vision, we need to be doing all of these things. We need to be thinking about certainly the 2040 vision. We need to think about events. We need to, all the, you know, you need people who can do all of these things more or less at the same time. It's not a session where, you know, we concentrate on one thing. We've got to do it all. And I think that's very important. The party politics, we all get that question. And to me, it's irrelevant. You can't be in a position where you're taking orders from any party. You're not taking orders from any party. You're there. If any party gets upset, well, fine, but we're not out to upset them. We're there. We're in fact the opposite. We're there to work with whatever party is in power, both state and federally. And that's our job, not to take orders and not to prop up anybody. So it's a very important thing people need to realise. Yep.
Thanks, Peter. I might just bring us back onto economic development if I can. Sorry, Sue.
Yeah, no, I was just going to follow up on what Peter has said there with this whole question about party politics. It wasn't even on my mind when I stood up to campaign for this role on council at all, at any level. And it kind of was a side swipe. Why are people asking me this question? My son observed, you know, it's Mum, they're treating you like you're an MP, and you're not an MP. You're someone who is wanting to work in the community for the community. And with all of my experience in the customer service field, it is just, for me, it's another example of where you can provide great service and help organisations provide great service for each other and with each other for the community. So for me, that's you know, really important to say that. And the other thing I'd say is, you know, in the organisations I've worked in, you always get lots of different agendas running anyway. And it's not party politics then, it's the IT team have this view, or the marketing team have this view, or the sales team, or the clinical specialist. So everybody comes to a project with a range of different slants of how they might interact with that project or achieve something on that project. So the real challenge for the lead team, and a great lead team does this, is to articulate the plan, have a process where there is review around spend, delivery on outcomes promised, dealing with the issues that come up unexpectedly, and regular communication. So you have your eye on the prize the whole time. Not saying that makes it easy, but it gives you a real focus to hang on to. So you have the hard questions, then you celebrate all the successes along the way, and you just generate some fabulous momentum to achieve something that, you know, the majority is bought into and have agreed to the plan. So that is what really excites me about working on council, is to bring that experience and to really support people have that great experience. I mean, when I started in customer service work, you know, a lot of organisations had not had good service cultures. There was infighting, bickering, and the customer was losing out time and time again, complaining a lot, but not being listened to. And I've had the privilege to work with some leading organisations in different sectors on how they can turn that around. And then really, you know, the reason they're there is because there's a customer base. The reason council is here is because there's a community. You know, that's the construct. So for me, party politics is a side issue. We're going to have enough people having views on how they want to work on a project. And the key is having a great team of councillors working with a great team in council to get things achieved. Yes, and economic development is a key part of the debates that we'll have, and things where we have to achieve. We have to achieve, you know.
Yeah.
It's not good enough what we're seeing at the moment at all.
Great, thank you very much, Sue. And before I weigh in on that discussion, I'm just going to get Justin to start moving his lips again, and I'll start with his comment that he's given me down the bottom. That is so important, Sue. We aren't politicians. We are people that care about helping our community and making it better. P.S. Sue just nailed it. So there you go. Keep moving your lips, please, Justin. Working closely, sorry, let me go. Part of what we can do, this is again from Justin, is keeping successful small businesses in Frankston. I actually ad-libbing there a bit, I couldn't agree more. Small businesses that have been successful, that need to grow and help them do this. In a city that has an average of 31 jobs per 100 people, we need to make sure that at a basic level, we're making the city attractive, not only aesthetically, but also feasible. We work closely with making sure we're getting every grant we can from state, federal, and mutual investments from the private sector to work together to make this work. I'd say I completely agree with what I just said on your behalf there, Justin. And I think it's really important that we understand that small and medium-sized businesses is the backbone of any economy, both whether that be in Frankston or whether that be at a state level, or whether that be nationally. And I really see that whilst on the one hand you might want to attract larger employers to cities like Frankston, what's critically important though is that the backbone of that, the small and medium-sized organisations, and it's not just for-profit businesses, it's also, there are a lot of good social enterprises that are emerging in different models of business as well, but encouraging them to not just set up but also stay in Frankston, to grow in Frankston, is really going to be quite critically important to our future as well. And I know there's been a lot of good work that's been done in that area with some of the kind of co-working hubs. There's the Frankston Foundry. There's been some good work done on that in the economic development team at Frankston Council. But I think the thing that concerns me is about how we make sure that it's much more coherent and how it ties in with a strategic vision. And I think that point that you made, Sue, about you want a team of councillors that have different perspectives, because that gives you diversity of thought and allows people to challenge each other in a very, very respectful way in order to obviously work through that discussion, then reach a point where actually, you know what, I can live with whatever it is that's been agreed, because it roughly reflects what I thought and it roughly reflects what somebody else thought as well. But I think coming into the new term of council, we're certainly going to have to be bold as well. I can see Brad edging forward again. No, he's not. Okay.
It must just be the look on my face. Yeah. Yeah, let's let someone else have a go.
I'd like to give an example of how different. Okay, so I can say that I'm interested in protecting the environment. And we can talk about Langwarrin Fauna and Flora Reserve, for instance. Now, there's competing interests with respect to burn-offs there and protecting the local community, clearly. If you get different expertise in, I mean, I go back to my friend in Queensland, the National Park Ranger. He's in charge of basically controlled burning and also trying to control things that got out of control. So what do? Well, you combine expertise to actually solve the problem. There are ways of doing it, and Stephen, you'd know this, patch burning, et cetera, which in fact is not too different from what's happened in, for hundreds of years or thousands of years in Australia. There's also other expertise involved with respect to, say, for example, very large, tea tree plots that really do have a fire danger in Frankston, because there are some large plots of around. Now, historically, they've been there since we've come along. Aboriginals didn't allow that to happen. Tea tree too far inland, they used to burn it off periodically. So we've got to be careful with sort of preciousness or one set of expertise stopping us from doing other things. But that's where the composite view is always a good thing. And as Sue, I think, was saying, she probably used the words buy-in. I think you did. More or less, everybody's got to have buy-in to the plan and have their things that are important to them taken care of. And it is possible. It's not a win-lose thing. Frequently, it's not a win-lose. And I think that's important to remember.
Great, thanks very much, Peter. The other thing that's also, makes me think about, okay, well, we're not in normal times right now. The whole of 2020 has been possibly the strangest year that many of us have lived through, both in economic terms as well as in social terms as well. But what comes out of that, I think, creates a massive opportunity. And we talked a little bit about this when we did our discussion around urban renewal and trying to address the issues that we face in the CBD. But the notion that for many of us, the reality of work is that for people like myself, I know Brad, you would commute, Sue, you would commute. Those days of going to another location or another municipality 5 days a week are over. Our employers have made it very clear that the going to a centralised office somewhere is now going to be the exception rather than the default. And I think that creates a whole bunch of new opportunities for economic development in Frankston as well, not just from encouraging more work hubs and so on within the area, but actually simply having more people working from home, such as ourselves, will mean that we'll be spending more of our money and more of our time and more of our leisure activities in Frankston rather than spending it in other places. And I think there's a real opportunity there to come back to the marketing piece of actually selling Frankston's future as being one which is around, you know, that we talk about it being a lifestyle capital. Well, when you're combining work, play, or leisure and learning all in one place, you actually have nailed the lifestyle capital. I mean, there's so much potential there as well. Just picking up on a point from Justin before I leave the mic open. Urban renewal from Justin. You can move your lips now, Justin. Making the most of the space in the city, mixed use developments that are built sustainably, that encourage retail, commercial and residential. Absolutely agree. Love the idea of commercial shared spaces, ad hoc office share to plug the gap between working from home, and also remembering that there's those kind of ad hoc social interactions that we miss by not being in a shared office environment. He also notes that he's guilty of taking his MacBook down to the beach and working there. Maybe some municipal Wi-Fi in certain and sort of co-working spaces in the open. Just throwing it out there as an idea. Maybe not such a bad thing. And you know, there's a real opportunity there to kind of think about not the world as it was or what the economic development might have been if we hadn't had 2020, but what it could be as we wake up to a whole new way of living and working.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Stephen, because I think it's very important to recognise that we are in a different landscape now. It's a very visceral one. You know, we all of us are experiencing the impact of COVID-19 this year and what it means to all aspects of our lives. So the next council group will need to work very closely with state and federal global bodies to really understand what this means. And even when we get a vaccine, we're still not sure what that's going to mean. Is that a permanent vaccine, or is it, you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions. So dealing in a world where there's ambiguity, but we know people love security and confidence around what the group that they're looking to, the council, can do is really, really important. The council to date, you know, over the years have done some great things. You know, there's been a lot of achievements. However, we are in a very different landscape. In talking to people in the Northwest Ward that I have, which has been awesome, I have to say, it's just been such an insightful experience. One of the really loud and clear messages is around being heard and being listened to and being consulted, and the fact that community consultations trailed off in recent years. So a format for that, how we do it going forward, you know, that's up for discussion as well. But that dialogue on things that are really important to people and how they're running their lives day to day, week to week, the council needs to get back somehow. And you know, that's going to be really important. And then, you know, we don't always get everything we want either, but being able to say to someone why a decision didn't go their way is really important too. You know, taking it down to a family level, we all have told our kids or siblings, I'm not doing that, or you're not getting that, or it's not going to happen for another 6 months, and this is why it's not going to. Maybe we don't do that with our kids, we just say because mummy said so. But you know, but I think being able to, that's part of being accountable in an elected role or in a recruited role, that you can stand up for the decisions that you've made and can speak to them and explain them and share them with people. So again, that's a really important part, I think. So you know, I'd like to, if I was elected and in this role, have people hold me to account on that, you know, because that's an important part of why a councillor is elected. And going forward with health, economic, all sorts of issues, the councillors are going to be challenged to be responsible in a number of different areas that affect people's lives. So I think that's key.
Great, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I was really looking at Brad then. I didn't know he was coming forward again, but he's relaxed. I didn't want to butt in. Just two things about what Sue said. Just me too, with the people reaching out and saying they want to be involved, they want their voices heard. I had one guy who volunteered to set up a South Ward communication group, and he was quite advanced with this. Now, I think that's fantastic. So there is a lot of people out there wanting to have their voices heard. On the other point about, what do you think of? Do you think this should happen? And one of the reasons, there's been a few of those. One of the recent ones was, I've heard that there's a possibility that there might be an area of the beach set aside for dogs to be off leashes and run around. I could make other comments about that and dogs running around already off leashes, but what do you think? And I said, well, I'd have to know where the area of land is, over the stretch of beaches for a start. And I'd also have to know what the beach walking community, the people are there most often, how they feel about it. I said, I might walk along, and I did make the point, there's a lot of dogs that seem to be off the leashes anyway, but dogs seem to like me. They run over to say, pat me, because, I don't know, you're a Dr. Dolittle or something. I can talk to cats. I can do cat language, but not dogs. So there's that, but there's a lot of questions to be asked. And I did say, on the other hand, there's irresponsible dog owners with huge dogs that are a little bit too aggressive, and there's been some terrible damage done to smaller, weaker dogs. I've heard about it, I haven't witnessed it. So there's a lot of issues. So it's not like, oh, I'm all for it or I'm all against it. I love dogs, if it was possibly maybe. Then there's the environmental thing, depending on where it is, of course. On the stretch of beach, there's running off into the dunes and the shorebirds, etc. So there's a lot of questions, so I'm not against it. I'm not absolutely for it. I just we need to see what the beach walking community thinks and go from there. And if we do it, then we have to think, well, what would be the downside? If 80% of people want it, okay, where's it going to be? And what are the downsides that we can mitigate against? So all those questions have to go through before you can give a glib answer. But it's about reaching out to people and seeing what the public or the residents think.
And I think that's, that whether we're talking about dogs and beaches or if we're talking about economic development, then, it's that consultation is actually really important as well. Yeah. I think we might save the dog leash beach issue for our Sunday session tomorrow. And we can pick that up because I've certainly had a few questions about it as well. Justin has just sent me, I'm just going to tell him to get his lips ready, but he's just sent me his sort of final reflection for this discussion as well. Closing argument actually, before I get on to Justin's closing argument, it appears that there's an election bidding war that's just started because Oliver Hill, candidate for West Ward, is just noting that there's plenty of shared office space in the West Ward. I just don't know if that's going to wash with me, all the voters for that. See what I did there?
He floated the idea, though.
He did float the idea, didn't he?
Oh, no. Don't follow the example, Sue, really.
Yeah.
I think I just want to wave all that away. Sorry.
You want to just... obviously he's trying to flex his West Ward muscles. Right, okay, back on to Justin's closing argument. So from Justin, you can start moving your lips now. I think we need to rely on our businesses to help us work together to participate and provide feedback on what makes us great and how to market with an out-of-the-box thought pattern. I agree with you there. We've got marketing firms, advertisers, real estate, retail stores, etc. So many experienced views on marketing, and we could use this to create something really special. There is, however, no point in doing so unless council are facilitating economic development and economic prosperity. In turn, it allows us to invest into more spaces for public use, whether this is more flora and fauna, bike tracks, park improvements, etc. This is the basic fundamental of the council working with the community for the community. We have teams of super experienced people within council, notwithstanding the overall community, and we need to work cohesively together to make this happen. It's self-investing to a secure future. I think that's very well said there, Justin. I think that's, he does though say that Oliver Hill, to tell Oliver Hill he's not prepared to pay extra rates in the West Ward. So just to note that, Oliver, we might actually have to have a debate with Oliver at some point. Some controversial policy settings there from the West Ward. My reflection, no, Brad's reflection.
When we're marketing Frankston, we're trying to attract people to Frankston. We're trying to promote our businesses. We're trying to get people to come here, enjoy our environment, enjoy our facilities, eat in our restaurants. Right, that creates jobs. You know, I've got teenage kids. Others have too. They like to work part time. We need to encourage that. And when we're doing that with our marketing, we promote our strengths. That's our environment, a place to live and work, our reserves, our beaches. We have some terrific eateries in Frankston, at least when COVID's not happening. So we advocate to the rest of Melbourne. We also have to market ourselves to the state and the federal governments and why they have to help us with that, why we need their money and their assistance. And critical to that is to stay apolitical. We can't have them looking at us as a collection of party political stooges. We have to focus on the job, put all of those opinions and views to one side and act as councillors, stay professional, promote Frankston. It's all about influence. We need them to listen to us and not dismiss us. So any candidate, any councillor, that is absolutely key.
Great.
Great, thanks very much, Brad. My closing reflection on today's discussion is when I look at places like Geelong, when I look at places like Dandenong, when I look at some of the work that's being done in some of the other outer metropolitan suburbs, and I think how much more can we do in Frankston? I don't want to see streetscapes like the one that's behind Sue or shop fronts like the one that's behind me. I want to see a busy, active Frankston. I want a Frankston where I know that my kids, when they're old enough to get a part-time job, can get a part-time job and start generating their own income. I want a Frankston where young people who have got innovative entrepreneurial ideas actually have the space and the opportunity and the support to do that. And I want a Frankston that can kind of stand up where it's people as a whole and say, we are proud of the fact that we live in Frankston and we see a really bright future for the city. I think that there is, amongst this group and a number of the other candidates that are running in the different wards, that there is a real opportunity for us to make a substantial shift in the way council operates. I'm excited about the future, I have to say. And I think, you know, despite the challenges that have been presented to us about COVID-19, I think in a post-COVID world, the ability and opportunity to turn Frankston into almost kind of satellite working hub for people is tremendous, and I'm really excited, looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for the comments. Apologies if we didn't get to all of them. We are back tomorrow, 4 o'clock, for our Sunday sessions, where we won't be talking about policy per se, but we're doing our reflections on the week. It'll be an exciting conversation because we know most of the ballot papers have arrived in your inbox. And so we'll be having a bit of a discussion about the campaign to date. And then next week, we're hoping on Tuesday, we'll be able to have a conversation about community sporting organisations with some special guests. I am hoping that will be an extra 1 or 2 candidates joining us over the next few conversations as well. But look forward to talking to you all tomorrow. Get out there, enjoy the sunshine that has clouded over a little bit. Enjoy Frankston, but most of all, have a wonderful day. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.